When you think about the blood-soaked trade in illegal drugs that gripped South and Central America during the 20th century, there's one person whose name stands above the rest as the most successful, the most efficient, and the wealthiest drug kingpin to ever exist: Pablo Emilio Escobar. At the peak of his power, Escobar is estimated to have been worth $30 billion. Money he made and secured through some truly insidious means. He didn't just move tons of drugs around the world, he was ordering murders and political assassinations as well. From his prodigious rise to the top to his bloody fall, Escobar was sure to spend as much of his billions worth of illicit funds as he could. He was a man who enjoyed his luxury after all. Plus, he had a business to run. So, here are some of the things Escobar spent his billions on. Owning multiple types of luxury vehicles isn't the only thing Escobar was willing to do with his billions of dollars. He was a man who loved to live in luxury, both home and abroad. So when he wasn't traveling to see the international sights, he would live in his own lavishly decorated homes in Colombia. One of these homes was his mansion called La Manuela, named after his daughter Manuela Escobar. It was a 20-acre estate in the resort town of Guatape. La Manuela really lived up to the reputation of the town it was located in. It was a proper vacation home. It had a massive pool, tennis court, and even stables. Pablo Escobar was sure to pour a lot of money into this place, not just to make it a great vacation spot, but to make it incredibly safe as well. Escobar had made a lot of enemies, so he wasn't going to take any chances. He built guard towers on the property so no one could get in without his permission. There was a massive helipad and seaplane dock, great for easy entry and exit if things were to quickly turn south for some reason. La Manuela did eventually fall to enemy hands, just 8 months before Escobar's death. 200 kilograms of TNT was stuffed into one of its bathrooms and detonated, destroying a home likely worth quite a few $1 million. The rest of it was abandoned and slowly reclaimed by nature. Another bit of real estate Escobar happily threw his millions of dollars at was the estate known as Hacienda Nápoles, Spanish for Naples Estate. This home is exactly the sort of fare you'd expect from a billionaire with more money than they knew what to do with. Hacienda Nápoles was built in Puerto Triunfo, Colombia. It occupied an insane 7.7 square miles of land, all for him, his family, and several of his bodyguards to live on. Escobar was sure to fill this place with as many attractions and amenities as he could fit in. The home featured a sculpture park, a complete zoo that included many kinds of animals from around the world, such as antelope, elephants, giraffes, and hippopotami to name a few. Escobar also stored his massive collection of vintage and luxury cars and bikes on the property as well, and because he was a man that enjoyed having a bit of fun in his downtime, he built a kart racing track in Hacienda Nápoles, and even a bull ring. It's pretty obvious Escobar had a love for massive properties that allowed him to simultaneously show off his extreme wealth, store his billions in cash, and run the Medellin cartel from. An example of this would be La Casa Grande, Escobar's massive home located on the tiny Caribbean island of La Isla Grande. The island home didn't just serve as Escobar's home away from home, it was where he would host parties and meetings with members of the Medellin cartel. During the height of its grandeur, whoever was lucky enough to see the inside of this splendid home and remain alive would have seen over 300 exquisitely furnished rooms, featuring opulent displays like solid gold shower heads in every single bathroom, showing off his extreme amount of wealth. As you can imagine, golden shower heads don't exactly come cheap, and neither did the enormous swimming pool, helicopter landing pad, and dock La Casa Grande came with. But that wasn't much of a problem for a big spender like Escobar. He might have enjoyed spending millions decking out his different properties around Colombia, but if there's one home he probably didn't enjoy spending his millions of dollars on, it was his self-built prison, known as La Catedral.
La Catedral was not a prison, it was a palace. And he generally continued to run his cartel as if he was free.
In order to protect himself from rival drug cartels, expropriation to the United States, and rotting away in a prison cell, Escobar struck a deal with the authorities in Colombia to allow him to build his own prison. He proceeded to spend a lot of money building one of the craziest prisons in the world, a place luxurious enough to be known as Hotel Escobar. Suffice to say, this prison wasn't exactly built to keep Pablo in. He could easily leave whenever he felt like it. Instead, it was more of a fort, protecting him from his enemies. The prison was filled with every modern convenience Escobar could fit into the place. He bankrolled a casino where he would gamble with his men. He built a life-sized playhouse for his daughter Manuela. He even built a spa and a football field in case he ever ran the risk of getting bored. Escobar would often host many guests and throw lavish parties in La Catedral. He had built the place with very luxurious rooms, and he was going to show it off. Escobar also outfitted the prison with state-of-the-art communication devices, allowing him to run his drug empire from afar. If he was going to spend his fortune building a luxury prison for himself, you know damn well he was going to make that money back. None of this drew the ire of the Colombian government, who were more than content with Escobar playing prison. But after it was reported that he had 4 of his lieutenants tortured and murdered in La Catedral, the entire arrangement fell apart. Having successfully figured out the most efficient way to smuggle several tons of cocaine and make more money than he could possibly know what to do with, I mean that in the most literal fashion, by the way, according to Escobar's brother, about 10% or $2.1 billion was written off from their earnings annually. Because of how much it was, they could never store it properly. Their money either kept getting eaten by rats, destroyed by the elements, or simply getting lost. It turns out, despite how many bribes Pablo was willing to pay, most banks simply didn't want to touch his illicit money. So what other choices did he have but to spend as much as he could? It's said that he purchased 15 private jets and 6 helicopters, as well as a massive collection of luxury cars. Some of these cars include his 1972 Mercedes 600 Pullman. Escobar fancied himself the unofficial president of Colombia and had wanted to occupy the chair of actual president of Colombia when he was alive. He even managed to find a position in the Colombian parliament, that is, before he got removed for his drug affiliation. This vehicle really reflects Escobar's grandiose self-image. The Mercedes 600 Pullman was the preferred limo of choice for several heads of state back in the day. Escobar was sure to add this $200,000 limo to his extensive collection. The limo was eventually destroyed by the rival Cali cartel during a bombing of his Medellin home in 1988. Shame. The poor car never did anything wrong. Its only crime? Ferrying around a very violent man. Another luxury car destroyed in the aforementioned bombing was Escobar's 1964 Porsche 356. Its rusty carcass still resides at the Hacienda Nápoles, along with the scraps of Escobar's other cars destroyed during the attack. As part of a macabre museum, next to their charred remains, a plaque reads, "Escobar's luxury car collection was a symbol of ostentation and his leadership in the underworld. It was the first to suffer the consequences of multiple wars. Only these scraps remain." He also owned a 1978 Renault 4. Escobar used this one to drive in the 1979 Renault Cup during his first foray into racing. Escobar was a man of many passions, and he was happy spending unreal amounts of money pursuing them. He might have been a terrible racer, but that didn't prevent him from participating. There were many allegations that he sabotaged competitors' cars and had tax thrown on the course, but really, that's just Escobar being Escobar.
Piensa hacer 50 canchas.
Sí, en todos los municipios, porque queremos que todos los municipios y todos los barrios, por marginados y populares que sean, participen de o se beneficien de estos programas.
Escobar wasn't universally hated in Colombia, despite his bloody grip over the lives of many and running one of the most powerful cartels in Colombian history. This is because he was sure to cultivate a rather charitable identity in the minds of the people, to the point where he was seen as a Robin Hood and a hero to some in Colombia. He would allegedly distribute money through housing projects and other civic activities, constructing homes for the many impoverished in Colombia. And as a lifelong sports fan, he was credited with building football fields and multi-sports courts, as well as sponsoring children's football teams. Escobar's eventual death was not quite a joyous event for everyone. Several people came out for his funeral procession, many even called for revenge. Pablo Escobar's final act of charity was post-mortem, when his many properties were ransacked for the treasure troves of cash he would hide in them. He certainly made a few scavengers a lot wealthier.
A principios de los años 80, Escobar se encontraba en la cima del mundo. Tenía la familia que siempre había soñado y lideraba el cartel de Medellín, el cual controlaba el 80% del tráfico mundial de cocaína.
You can't be the head of the Medellin cartel, smuggling 15 tons of cocaine per day into the United States and bringing in more than $150 million per day without spending at least some of your own cash to do it. Escobar would spend a substantial amount of his wealth funneling it back into his business. After all, running a global drug smuggling operation wasn't exactly cheap. But that doesn't mean Escobar wasn't making back tenfold what he would invest. In fact, he was making so much money, his cartel would spend over $1,000 per week on the rubber bands they would use to wrap their stacks of cash. Unlike your everyday business, though, running a massive illegal operation like Escobar did came with a few costs you don't typically have to deal with. One of these expenses was the sheer amount of people Escobar had to bribe. When you aren't bribing corrupt politicians to let you build your own prison, you're bribing bankers to help you launder your money. Escobar once said in an interview, when asked about the essence of the cocaine business, he said, "The business is simple. You bribe someone here, you bribe someone there, and you pay a friendly banker to help you bring back the money." Pablo Escobar and his cartel are said to be responsible for 80% of cocaine trafficked into the US during the 1970s and 80s. They came in through the seas and through the skies. One way or another, Escobar's drugs were going to get to its location. His first shipment of cocaine to the United States in 1970 was made on a small plane, the Piper PA-18 Super Cub, designed and manufactured by Piper Aircraft. This plane was a lightweight utility aircraft that could take off from rough fields with less than 200 feet of runway, making it an ideal aircraft for Escobar's operations. It was worth an estimated $300,000. Escobar would eventually upgrade his smuggling capacity and purchase a civilian utility aircraft manufactured by Cessna Aircraft Company. This one was larger than the PA-18 Super Cub, and it was powered by a 210 horsepower engine with additional fuel capacity. Stepping up his smuggling game would cost him $400,000, but that was money he was happy to spend. You do have to spend money to make money, and Escobar knew this. He would spend $2,000 to process every kilo of coke, and in every 400 kilo load, he would get a profit of $8 million. When Escobar had become too powerful to be personally flying his own drug-filled planes, he would charter pilots to smuggle it for him. Each operation would cost about $400,000. But Escobar wasn't just sending his drugs through the sky, he was smuggling it through the seas as well. He is said to have used 2 remotely controlled submarines for his operation. The submarines are said to have been obtained from the Russian Navy, with each one being capable of carrying 1 ton of cocaine. Over time, Escobar's smuggling operations would evolve. He would increase his supply capability to a much greater extent. Before the end of his life, Pablo's cocaine submarines were said to be capable of carrying up to 7 tons of cocaine. Despite his rampant processing and sale of drugs around the world, there were many people who idolized him, and, like his mother, never truly saw him as a criminal.
Yo sé que mi hijo no era tan malo como lo pintaban. Yo sé que a él le atribuían todo lo malo que sucediera. Yo quiero que recuerden lo bueno que hizo, porque él no hizo lo malo que dicen. Él hizo canchas, hizo un barrio para los pobres. En eso no se han fijado nunca. Como hijo, mejor dicho, no vuelve a nacer nadie en el mundo.
Escobar made billions, spent billions, lost billions. Which one of his purchases do you think was the most extravagant? And if you enjoyed this video, you should check out another one of our videos. See you there.